So we are now going to look at what we called in class Unit 4, the factor or labor or resource markets. What on your document is titled Unit 5. So this is the next set of questions that I'm going to review with you. I'm going to start here on number 1, defining these terms and explaining situations for each concept. So the first one I'm going to look at is derived demand. Derived demand is demand for a resource, usually a factor production, that is the result of demand for a product. So, for example, derived demand, P-R-O-D-U-C-T, derived demand is the result of needing something. So, a busy restaurant, super busy, needs more servers. So they have a derived demand for labor for workers, restaurant workers. But if they're slow, then they cut those people and they're not getting hours anymore. So their demand would decrease, which is why demand for labor is often a derived demand. They don't always need those workers. The next question, 1B, is asking about MRP and MRC, marginal revenue product and marginal resource cost. MRP is the additional revenue you gain when you hire that last unit of labor. You can find it by looking at MPP times MR, our productivity times our revenue from those units. And we find out how much we gained when we hired that additional worker. In class, we did this with the push-up machine. Every time I hired a person to do push-ups, they either made me money or they lost me money, depending on how much MRP they provided. MRC is the change in, that's a delta, change in cost with the additional unit of input. So my MRC is how much it costs me to add that additional unit of labor, add that additional input into my production. 1C is asking about a monopsony. A monopsony is an imperfect market structure in the labor market or the resource market where we have a market dominated by one buyer of labor. There's only one person really buying up the product. An example of monopsony is a small coal town where everyone basically works at the mine, right? There's not a lot of options when it comes to labor. So those are the 3 vocab words, or the 3 vocab topics that are very important for this unit. Next, I'm going to move on to number 2. All right, here we go for number 2. Using this chart regarding a perfectly competitive yo-yo factory, complete the following. Right. First, explain why the number of yo-yos produced increases at a decreasing rate as more workers are hired, and identify the 3 stages of returns. Second, explain how the firm decides how many workers to hire, and if the wage rate is $25, how many would that be? Third, assume there's an increase in demand for yo-yos and the price goes up to $3. How would the level of employment be affected? And D, complete the chart below. The first thing I'm going to do on this question is actually part D. I'm going to complete this chart because it's going to make it a lot easier to answer parts A, B, and C. So here we go. It says that this is perfectly competitive. So we know that the price of yo-yos is going to be $2 all the way down. Because in perfect competition, our prices don't change. Okay. The next thing I want to find out is my MPP, my marginal productivity. I'm going to see how much I gain with each additional worker. So at first I had 0 workers. I made nothing. I hired 1 worker. I increased by 20 units. I hired my second worker. I went from 20 to 50. So I increased by 30 units. Then I hired my next worker and I increased by 20 units. Then I increased by 15. All right. Now, what I'm simply doing is looking at how much each additional worker gained me in this factory. How much every time I hire someone, I am going up or going down. Okay. Now, the reason that was so simple is because this column, you guys, is all by 1. All right. It's very important to remember that it's not only the change in output, but it's the change in quantity, or your output, divided by the change in labor, all right, the number of workers. So if this increased over here by 5s, then this would have to be a change in 5. So it would not be a simple math. All right. So now we know our marginal product, okay? The next thing I'm going to find is my total revenue. How much money am I making? Well, if I produce 20 yo-yos and each yo-yo is $2, I have made $40. If I make 50 yo-yos at $2 each, my revenue is $100. I'm going to continue filling in this column. The math stays the same. 85 times 2 is going to be 170. And then I'm going to have 190. I'm going to have 200. Next, I'm going to have 206. I want to remind you guys that you will not have a calculator. You will not have a calculator on the AP exam. There's no calculators. So you have to be able to do this as mental math, okay? So finally, the last thing I'm going to find is my MRP, my marginal revenue product. And I can find this by looking at the change in total revenue divided by the change in our workers. All right. So I'm going to look at that here. The other way I can find it is either, because this is perfect competition, I could do MPP times price and get the same answer as change in total revenue divided by change in labor. Okay? I can use either formula and get the same answer. So I'm going from 0 to 40. So here I'm going to have plus 40. 40 to 100, it's going to be plus 60. 100 to 140 is plus 40. 140 to 170 is plus 30. Plus 20. Plus 10. Plus 6. Plus 2. Minus 8. Right, that's my MRP. What each additional worker gained me. So I hire my first person, I increased by 40. Hire my second person, I increased by $60. Hired my third person, I increased by 40. Then 30, then 10, 20 and 10, so on. Okay? So this was part D, completing the chart. That's what I just did. All right. Now let's go back and answer some of these questions because it should be very obvious now what we should do. All right. So A, explain the number of yo-yos produced increases at a decreasing rate. It increases at a decreasing rate as more workers are hired. Well, think back to our push-up machine. As I hired more and more people to do push-ups, I was getting fewer and fewer push-ups in the same time. And the reason is the law of diminishing marginal returns. It's called the law of diminishing marginal returns. So let's see if I can get this to work for me. Ready? All right. See if that works. Sweet. Kind of. Margins. Oh, I didn't want to read it right. Okay. So what I'm going to do is rewrite this. All right. I'm going to rewrite this. And I want to make sure we understand that diminishing marginal returns tells us right, that as we add more and more labor without changing our capital, we are not going to experience the same growth. And we can see the 3 stages of returns very clearly here. Okay? We have an increasing number of workers and a limited amount of capital. Our worker productivity falls. Okay? So every time we hire someone, we have decreased productivity. All right, so I totally forgot what I was saying when I paused the video, but I think I'm talking about diminishing marginal returns. I believe that's where I left off. So diminishing marginal returns is when we have an increasing number of workers sharing a limited amount of capital, so their productivity will fall. So even as you hire more and more people, you are decreasing productivity. On this graph, or on this chart, I apologize, on this chart, that is happening from the 3rd worker hired right here all the way to the 8th worker hired. You are experiencing diminishing marginal returns. And that's because your number of workers is going up right here. This is going up, but this is going up at a decreasing rate. So your productivity, you're still making more, but you're making more at a slower rate than you did before. Okay? But the question is not just about diminishing marginal returns. It also says identify and explain the 3 stages of returns. So diminishing marginal returns is that stage. Now we need to see the other 2 stages. And if you understand diminishing, the other 2 are really simple. There's increasing marginal returns. Hopefully this translates. All right, perfect. Now let me deal with this one. All right, I need to make this move to make it smaller. All right, that's happening right here. You can tell they're increasing marginal returns right here because we are going right here up, right? 0 to 20 to 30. That's our increasing marginal returns. The middle stage is diminishing marginal returns. And now my 3rd stage is going to be my final one down here at the bottom. You'll never guess what this stage is. It's called negative marginal returns. That's stage 3. Negative marginal returns. Oh, didn't mean to move that box. The screen is very sensitive today. Okay, negative marginal returns. This is the one that's happening down here. Let me make that a little smaller. So you can see that's down here. Negative marginal returns. And that's at the 9th worker where our marginal productivity goes negative. Okay, and then our MRP follows the same path. You can see for our negative marginal returns, our MRP is negative. For our diminishing marginal returns, our marginal RP is going down. And for our increasing marginal returns, our MRP is going up. Okay? So that's the 3 stages of returns. That's 2A. I'm going to erase some of this info, so if you need this, pause. Okay. So now let's move on. Trying to just make it pretty so it matches where we started, so that way I can to the next questions without getting distracted. Okay, here we go. All right, this is a -4. Trying to make sure all my numbers are good here. Everything else is pretty legible. It's 20. Okay, number 2B, or not to be. All right, explain how you decide how many workers to hire. Well, you guys already know the rule. You have it tattooed across your foreheads. You have all year long. And that rule tells us that if we hire where MRP equals MRC. MRP equals MRC. If we cannot equal MRP and MRC, if they're not exact, we are going to look where we can get as close as we can, all right, where MRP is greater than or equal to MRC. That didn't look cute. There you go. All right, so there's our option. If not equal, we want our revenue greater than our cost. So if our wage is constant at $25 per day, that means our MRC is 25, then we would hire how many workers? Cost is 25, but they gain us 40. Do we hire this guy? Yes. They cost us 25, he made us 60. Do we hire that guy? Yes. Cost us 25, he made us 40. Do we hire him? Yes. He cost us 25 and this guy made us 30. Do we hire him? Yes. He cost us 25, but he made us 20. Do we hire him? No, we do not hire him. This guy would not have a job at our factory. So that means how many workers would we hire? We would hire 4 workers. We would not hire the 5th. Okay? So using the MRP equals MRC rule, we hire 4 workers because at 4 workers, MRP is 30, MRC is 25, and that is the best or most profit maximizing way to hire our workers. Okay. Now for C, it's going to ask us to look at this a little bit differently because they're going to change something. So for C, instead of $2, it says demand has increased and yo-yos are now $3 each. So where this used to be 2, it's now going to be 3 all the way down. Okay. So now how would this impact us? Well, at a price of $3, our MRP is going to change. Okay. Our total revenue is going to change as well. But we're just looking at our MRP right now. So if this is $3, 20 times $3 is going to be 60. 30 times 3 is going to be 90. 20 times 3 is 60. 15 times 3 is 45. 10 times 3 is 30. 5 times 3 is 15. 3 times 3 is 9. 1 times 3 is 3. And this is going to be negative 12. Okay, so there is our new MRP. So now what's going to happen to our level of employment? Well, we're going to hire more workers because our MRP is higher. Our productivity is higher. These people are making us more money. So now that the MRP has increased, each of these workers is more productive. They make you more money. You're going to want to hire more workers. So you're going to increase, and we're going to still look for where MRP equals MRC. So looking for where MRP equals MRC, we know that we're paying them $25 a day. You pay 25, but they make you 60. Do we hire him? Yes. You pay him 25 and he makes you 90. Do you hire him? Yes. You pay this guy 25 and he makes you 60. You hire him. If you pay him 25 and he makes you 45, do you hire him? Yes. You pay him 25 and he makes you 30. Do you hire him? Yes. You pay him 15, or I'm sorry, you pay him 25, but he only makes you 15. Do you hire him? No, you do not. So we would hire 5 workers. So when the price went up, we increased how many workers we would hire. Okay, so now that we've finished the first 2, the next question we're moving on to is the FRQs. The very first FRQ, I know it's a really crappy copy, I apologize, is about P&L, a profit maximizing shirt manufacturing firm. Okay, now I want to point out some very key information in the question that I read and actually underlined when I read the question before I even read what the question was asking me. Okay? They are profit maximizing. So you know they are going to produce where MR equals MC. You already know that. They're profit maximizing. They can sell all they want. They can sell all they want at the price of $20. So you know that means it's perfect comp, perfect competition in the product market. They're selling all they want. They can hire all they want at a wage rate of $120 per day. So that means wages are constant. So that means they hire in a perfectly competitive labor market. Okay? And here is the short run production function. So now this is the short run, how many workers they hire and how many shirts each worker makes. So knowing that from the question, just from the setup, let's read what it asks you. 1A says, in what kind of market structure does this firm sell its output? It's incredible because I just told you, just from reading the question, you already know the answer. You already know that the market structure that we're selling under is perfect competition. It's perfect comp because we know that the price is constant. Remember Mr. Dark. All right, price is a perfectly elastic line, and they can sell all of the shirts that they want without having to lower their price. So it is a perfectly competitive market because the price is $20 and they can sell all they want. They do not change their price to sell additional units. All right, so that is a perfectly competitive market. Next, part B. In what kind of market structure does this firm hire its workers, and how can you tell? Again, I already saw that and answered that question before I even knew this is what it was asking. They are hiring in a perfectly competitive market because the market wage rate is constant. They are not increasing wages to attract more workers. All right, now C. Calculate MRP of the third worker showing your work. All right, so now we have to calculate our MRP. In order to do this, we are going to need to add some columns to this table, and then we'll show our work to answer the question. So I'm going to pick a color. What color do I want? I'm going to go orange because it makes me happy. All right, so now, all right, now let's add. We have the number of workers and we have the total number of shirts. Let's add our MP, our MPP, our marginal physical product. How much each worker gave us. So when we went from 0 workers to 1 worker, we added 10 shirts. From 1 worker to 2 workers, we added 15 shirts. Then we went from 25 to 45, so we added 20 shirts. 45 to 60, we added 15 shirts. 60 to 72, we added 12. 72 to 80, we added 8. 80 to 85 is 5. 85 to 82 is going to be minus 3, right? Make sure I did my math right. Yes, okay. So there's our marginal physical product, our marginal productivity. The next step is to find out our MRP. Well, to find MRP, we have to do either change in total revenue or change in our, because it's perfect comp, we can do MPP times MR. Both will answer the question. So let's go ahead and add our MR so we can do this column. Now, how do you know the MR for this product? Well, if it's perfect competition, you know that MR equals D equals AR equals P, Mr. Dark. And what's the price? $20. So what is MR? $20. Okay, so now I have 20 all the way down. Okay. So my final step is going to be to find my MRP. I need to do this times this to equal this. So 10 times 20 is 200. 15 times 20 is 300. 20 times 20 is 400. I'm just drawing lines so I don't lose track of my rows. 300. 12 times 20 is 240. 8 times 20 is 160. 5 times 20 is 100. And this is going to be -60. Okay? All right. So now I have my MRP. I need to find, what's my question again? Oh, calculate MRP of the third worker and show your work. So my MRP for my third worker is going to be worker 1, worker 2, worker 3, this guy right here. MRP is 400. All right, so it's 400 because 20 times 20 equals 400. And you can type MPP times MR. 20 times 20 equals 400. Okay, so that would be your answer for C. Okay, finally D is going to be, I believe D is how many workers to hire. Let me see the question. How many workers should this firm hire to maximize profits? All right, well, we know profit maximization is the rule MRP equals MRC. So if I want MRP to equal MRC, I need to find that spot. My MRC, my wage rate, is $120. So, just like we did before, okay? I pay him $120 and he makes me $200. Do I hire this guy? Yes, I do. I pay him $120 and he makes me $300. I hire him as well. I'm paying $120 and he makes me $400. I want to hire him. Pay him $120. He makes me $300. I'm going to hire him. I pay him $120. He makes me $240. I'm going to hire him. I pay him $120. He makes me $160. I'm going to hire him. I pay him $120. He makes me $100. I do not hire this guy. Okay? So where did I stop? I'm not hiring this guy. So I will hire 6 workers. And I'm going to hire 6 workers because that is where MRP equals MRC without cost going over, with 160 is greater than or equal to 120. But at 7 workers, my MRC is going to be 120. My MRP is 100. That would be a bad decision. So I will stop at the 6th worker. So now I'm going to move on to the very last FRQ on this one. And this FRQ is, again, hard to read. It has 4 parts, but it's asking for a lot of different identification or graphing. So I'm going to need to do it on a blank slide. I also want to stress to you that when you are looking at something like this, just because it has a lot doesn't actually mean you're writing a lot of sentences. The last one actually had to write more sentences out. This one is a lot actually shorter responses. So I'm going to move to a blank slide, but I'm going to read the question as I go. PetSal Corp is a profit-maximizing monopolist, and it sells a patented rabies vaccine for pets and earns economic profits. There's a lot of key information there. You know it's profit maximizing, so you know that MR equals MC is going to come into play. You know you're going to have to include MR equals MC. All right. Next, you know it's a monopolist. So that means D does not equal MR. All right, so that's another thing to include. And it's earning a profit. All right, so that means that ATC has to be lower than your price. Okay, those are all just from the first sentence. So let's see what the question wants us to do. A, draw a correctly labeled graph that shows each of the following: output, price, and area of profit. So let's get ready to draw that graph. We're going to start with our axes labeled P and Q. All right. The next thing we need to do is do our demand curve, downward sloping, and our MR curve. MR always drops below. Okay. Next, we're going to add our MC, our Nike swoosh. There we go. So we have our basics. Now the things we need to identify are price and quantity. That's what they want. A1, output and price of the vaccine. Well, you know it's profit maximizing, so that is very easy to find. All right? our output, find MR equals MC, drop it down, and this is our quantity for this monopoly. I just did M. Take it up to find our price at our demand curve. This is our price for the monopoly. Okay? So there is A1, output and price. The next thing they want is for the area of economic profits to be included. So in order, I'm going to erase MR equals MC because we've already got none in. Monopoly, we already found that. It's included in my graph. D equals MR is already included in this graph, not equal to. All right, I've already got it there. They're separate lines. So now we know that if they're earning an economic profit, average total cost has to be beneath the price. So I need to graph my ATC beneath my price. So my ATC needs to come over here. ATC. Okay? Now, if I'm going to shade my area of profit, I need to find where my quantity hits my ATC, which is right here. Okay? Drag that across, because that's my cost box. So my profit is going to be this shaded area right here. Okay? And you can either label it profit, or you can just say C shaded area. Doesn't matter. There you go. That would be full marks for A1 and 2. All right. Now let's move on to the next part of this question, part B. Assume that PetSal hires its production workers in a perfectly competitive labor market, and the wage rate is $20 per hour. Okay, so we know our selling is in a monopoly, but we're hiring in a perfectly competitive labor market. So we are going to have that wage rate is a horizontal line. Okay, so let's answer part 1. State the marginal conditions for hiring profit maximizing amount of labor. If you ever see profit maximizing, you know it's MR equals MC. You have it tattooed across your forehead. So if we have MR equals MC in the product market, in the labor market, we know the conditions. All right, so we are going to say that MRP equals MRC. Okay? All right. The conditions to hire are to hire where MRP equals MRC. That is our ideal position to hire in the labor market. B part 2 is draw a correctly labeled graph with our labor supply and demand curves and indicate the profit maximizing quantity. So we are going to draw our graph. You have your axes. Okay? We have our quantity of labor and we have our wage rates. Okay, this is not price, this is wage rate because we are in the factor market. Now, we know that the wage rate is $20. Okay, so our supply, our MRC, is $20. Now, our demand for labor, our MRP, is right here. So how many people do we hire? This is our quantity of labor, okay? The quantity of labor that we would want to hire for this company. All right. Now for part C. I'm going to scroll this down a little bit so I have some room. Part C It's asking us to think about, what if wage rates fall to $15 per hour? Show on your diagram how each of these would be affected. Supply of labor and the quantity of labor. So if our wage rates fall to $20, I'm sorry, from $20, I'm going to graph it in purple. Why not? Okay, so our wage rate's going to fall to $15 an hour. So drop our wage rate to 15. Here it is. All right, so what has happened to our quantity of labor? All right. So for part C, you would say the supply of labor decreased. And the this is C1, right? And this is C2. What happened to the quantity of labor? The amount of labor hired would increase. All right, there's C1 and C2. All right, the final thing that we have to answer here is going to be part D. Given the lower wage rate in C, indicate how each of these things would change. Total fixed cost. Well, we know that labor is not a fixed cost. Labor is actually a variable cost. So total fixed cost would stay the same. Okay. However, D1, D2, D3. All right. D2, how would our marginal cost change? Well, our marginal cost includes our variable cost. So our marginal cost includes this labor supply. Our cost is going down, so marginal cost would decrease. All right, now finally, looking up here at our graph of the price of the product, okay, if our MC is going down, let's look up here. You do not have to show this on the graph, but I am going to graph it out for you to see, okay? If our marginal cost was to go down, actually, I think I can just drag it. Our marginal cost decreases. It would go down. All right, MR equals MC would go down. That means we would have a lower price because at this new MR equals MC point, our price would be lower. Okay, so the price of the product would go down. I'm going to try and put this back where it was to start so I don't mess everybody up, but you can kind of get an idea of how I found that answer. Okay. So now I know that my price would decrease. All right. Now that is the end of what we call Unit 4, but on your packet says Unit 5, practice sets, practice problems. If you have any questions, let me know.